Hi everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to teach you how to make deviled eggs. It's one of my favorite things to take to a picnic or a luncheon, any place where we're going to have a covered dish and sharing meals. One thing I love about this is you don't come home with leftovers, and as you know, deviled eggs are the hit of the party. So everybody loves deviled eggs. So I'm going to talk with you about how I make them and then give you some ideas about how you might switch it up and make them even more your own. So you're going to start with a dozen eggs, and I've kind of got a head start here. I have my dozen eggs I've started to cut in half, where you're going to have half of your egg is the white, of course, or the halves of white are going to go on to a tray, and I actually have this really cool dish because I do take these a lot. So this is a kind of a to-go container that I can take to mix in events. And as you cut them in half lengthwise, you're going to then take the yolk and put the yolk into a bowl, and that's where we're going to season that and then put it back into the halves of the whites. So just continuing on the process, I have my other eggs here. I'm going to go ahead and start cutting them in half while I talk with you about the recipe. So the contents of the innards, I'll say, of the eggs consist of course, the yolk and some mayonnaise. That gives it a nice consistency, a little bit of tartness and flavor and smoothness. Mustard. I use a lot of mustard. I do tend to use Dijon mustard. That's what we keep around the house, but you might use yellow mustard or brown mustard or spicy brown mustard, whatever works for you. And distilled white vinegar. A little bit of salt to taste. I don't use much salt. We tend to have cardiovascular issues in my family, so we do tend to not use too much salt, but that'll give it a little bit of kick, so I do use a tiny bit. Think about the recipe. It's probably about a half cup of mayonnaise. That's what I start with, and then I do season it to taste and adjust it after I've mashed everything together. With the mustard, I use 3 tablespoons approximately. Usually I just squeeze it in there and then adjust the taste at the end, but you can start with 2 or 3 tablespoons and then adjust at the end for your particular taste. And then for the distilled white vinegar, that gives it a little kick. So if you don't like that kick and that tartness, then you might want to skip that. You do have a little bit of vinegar flavor that does come through in your mustard. But I use about 2 tablespoons of distilled white vinegar. And then again, after I get everything together, I give it a little taste. And at that point, I make adjustments. Now this egg kind of has this soft side. So I'll tell you what I do. I always start with about 1.5 dozen hard-cooked eggs. And you know, even when you peel them, sometimes there's a little problem there too. Sometimes the peel doesn't come off too well. 2 tips for that actually are to use older eggs. And the other tip, which may not work for everyone, is to use an Instant Pot. When you use an Instant Pot pressure cooker, the peels just come right off. Even if we buy our eggs from a local farm, and I had 1.5 dozen eggs here, and I only had 2 that had a problem getting the peel off. So if you have a problem getting your shell off of the egg and it really bothers you, I highly recommend buying a pressure cooker and doing it that way. And I prefer the Instant Pot. It has a lot of great features. So anyways, for this one, I really don't want to use this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put the yolks in there. But at the end, this one might be mine for flavor, right? My taste. Bear with me here. This is a new setup for me. Okay. There we go. Okay. So here we go again. So I'm going to go ahead and set these aside, and I'm just going to keep going until I have my whole tray filled up. This tray that I have, it has 2 layers, and it's enough to hold 12 eggs. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up. Kind of started already again with that first half. So let's get these going and get these in here. Okay, 1 more to go. And then what you want to do is mash up your yolks before you start. I do it before I start anything. So now I have all my whites here. I'm going to mash up the yolks, and my personal favorite, I just use a potato masher for this. Okay, so get them all mashed up and soft. Doesn't take much. You can use a fork or maybe a spatula. Maybe you have other tips too you could share with the group. Okay, I've got them all mashed up nice. And I'm going to go ahead and put my mayonnaise in there. It's about a half cup of mayonnaise, maybe a third. Again, we'll adjust at the end for taste. Admittedly, I usually do this I just wing it myself, okay? All right, so now I have the mustard going in, and I have my Dijon mustard and my distilled white vinegar, okay? I'm gonna get that all in there, and just a tiny bit of salt. I don't think they're excited about the eggs. They're excited because their master is coming home. Okay, so got that all in there. I'm just gonna mash this all together really good, really well. Okay, and this is where you'll start to see the consistency and look to see what kind of consistency do you want in your eggs. Okay, I like mine a little thick, but even this is a little thick for me. I can see it right away. So I'm just gonna grab a little bit more mayonnaise, right? Put that in there. And also a little vinegar. I actually started with a little less vinegar than usual. And the vinegar tends to make, of course, smooth it out, water it down a little bit. I do like that tartness. So we're going to get that going. And then once you get this all together, working for you, again, I'm looking for consistency first. Now I could do a little taste. They're perfect. They're perfect. Okay, well, I have to wipe this off me. I got some on me. All right, so now you want to get it in the eggs. Now, some people spoon it in the eggs. I use a bag. So you can use a pastry bag if you have one, but I don't tend to have that. So you can use a bag. I use like a freezer bag, quart size, and I'm just going to cut off the corner of it because that's going to give me that exit for my yummy stuffing here. All right. So we're going to go here, get all this goodness into the bag, and then we're going to get that into the eggs. And when you are making your eggs, there's a lot of different things you can do as far as the flavorings. You might use some little lemon juice to bring some nice flavor, maybe an avocado. I've been meaning to try that. I love avocados. I just haven't tried that yet. Okay, so I got that in there. Yeah, it could be a little messy, right? All right, so I'm going to taste it. You can't just wipe this off, right? So good, so good. All right, I'm going to zip this up. And I'm going to squish this down. I'm going to make this kind of into a pastry bag, see? And then you could just get that right into your eggs. Put it in where the yolk was before. Right? And as you get it in there, you might have a little left at the end. Maybe you can squish more in there. Maybe you just want to eat whatever's left at the end. Okay. All right, so here we go. Here we have our eggs, our deviled eggs, with our deviled yolks in there. And as far as the finish goes, you have various options you can use there. Again, thinking about the flavoring in it, but let's talk about the flavor on top. I use paprika. I love paprika. I use a lot, actually. You might want to cut back when you see how much I put on. You could also use bacon or chives. I've seen ideas where maybe you could even have a deviled egg bar with you and your friends, and you make the deviled eggs just like this, and then you put out a bar with a bunch of different toppings, like maybe some salmon, some chives, some little slices of cherry tomato, roasted red peppers, all kinds of things you can do. So here I go with my paprika. Now, the tricky thing at this point, in my opinion, is saving these things till you go to your picnic, first off. But they do develop a much deeper flavor and nice fusion if you can let them sit overnight. They don't typically tend to last overnight, but you can see, for me, this is what my finished product looks like, okay? I want to, just for a moment, kind of go back through this process. I would recommend starting with more than a dozen eggs, but a dozen eggs is what's going to go into your recipe. Start with more than a dozen in case you have some that the yolk's kind of close to the side and you get that weird edge like I did here. That's not sufficient enough to hold your yolk in there when you're eating it, or maybe you have some breakage during the cooking process, those kinds of things. So you'll start with a dozen hard-cooked peeled eggs, cutting them in half, putting the yolk into a bowl, putting your white onto into a container like I did, or onto a plate. They have special containers that you can use if you're having a luncheon at your house. They have really kind of some fun things you can buy for that. And then you'll go to your seasonings. And again, I made traditional eggs today, which consist of mayonnaise, mustard, and vinegar. Maybe some people wouldn't count the vinegar as traditional, and it's distilled white vinegar. Other things you might use in your stuffing, your deviling process: relish or pickle juice. I've heard about pickle juice being used too. Maybe you'll use a little bit of horseradish. That's kind of fun. Maybe some lemon juice, maybe just a tablespoon or so of lemon juice. I did use Dijon mustard, but you might use yellow mustard or brown mustard or spicy mustard. Or again, this is the one I really want to try, is doing it with an avocado. And as you finish the product, if you can, leave it sit overnight. You will get a better outcome and nice fusion of the flavors. And enjoy. And I hope you enjoyed my video, and I hope that your deviled eggs are the hit of the party.